Welcome to Daily Meditation with Sangha Live.
Welcome everybody to this week of daily practice meditation with Sangha Live. I'm very happy to be back here with Sangha Live. It's been several months since I was here, and it's always great to come back and join the Sangha Live family, the Sangha Live Sangha. Wonderful to see lots of familiar names in the chat. Lots of new names. Hi, Harriet. So when George contacted me a month ago or so, he was describing he asked for a theme for this week, and he told me that the theme for the month is interconnectedness, and it's such a beautiful theme. We don't always hear about this theme in Buddhist meditation, in classic Buddhist meditation, but I love it. You know, I'm a meditation teacher, but I'm also an Aikido teacher, and connection is a core practice of the art. And one can only really fully connect with another if there's interconnectedness, which I will speak about today. But if interconnectedness is such a beautiful, wonderful, amazing thing, in fact, I would say it is the sweetest. Maybe it's better to say it's one of the sweetest experiences that a human being can have. Interconnectedness is one of the sweetest experiences that a human being can have. And if it's such a wonderful thing, then, oh my God, why do we see so much polarization in the world? I remember during COVID, I started saying that we are living through the most polarized times, certainly I've ever seen in my lifetime, perhaps in history, I don't know. But then 2025 said, hold my beer, as they say. That the rate of polarization seems to be increasing precariously. And if you're just a little bit connected with the news of the world, I think you'll understand what I mean. So the theme that I chose for this week is Dharma practice in a polarized world. And throughout this week, we're really going to be looking at this movement from polarization or dissonance towards resonance. Yeah, that's an important move that we need to make individually in myself, from dissonance to resonance, interpersonally in my day-to-day relations, move from dissonance to resonance. And then there's one further step from resonance to coherence, that deeper cut, so to speak, that deeper connection. And this week, in one way or the other, each day we're going to be looking at that movement, that travel from dissonance to resonance, from resonance to coherence. The format of this week will be the same as always. I'll give a short talk, then we'll meditate for some 20 minutes or so. Then at the end, I'll do a Q&A, about 10 minutes. There'll be 10 minutes left at the end for Q&A. I do want to remind everybody that if I don't get to your questions, I will be sure to save them and I'll answer them the next day. And if I don't get to your questions, you can also throw them up in the Sangha Live forum. This week, I will kind of monitor that forum. If any questions come up, I'll do my best, time permitting. I'll do my best to answer those questions. It is summer vacation. My kids are out of school. So I've got some pool days and things like that. So And also on Wednesday, as usual, I will be doing a hot seat interview. Instead of the Q&A, I'll invite one member of our Sangha to come up and do a hot seat interview specifically about your practice. So if there's something, if it's somebody who hasn't done it before, and if it's something that you're interested in doing a little fine tuning of your meditation practice, then consider joining the hot seat interview, joining me live on screen here. So today we're going to be exploring the Dharma of interconnectedness. Greater theme is that practicing Dharma in a polarized world. Day one, we're going to be looking at the Dharma of interconnectedness. I suppose in a Dharma context, I first heard this term so clearly, succinctly put. Yeah, sorry, George, I'll try to speak louder. No problem. I first heard this term used by Thich Nhat Hanh. It was actually, I think his term is interbeing, but it's pretty much the same thing. And Thich Nhat Hanh was such a beautiful living example of interbeing, of interconnectedness. He was one of my early influences in the Dharma. You know, it's probably back in the 90s. I started reading his books about mindfulness, and he's such a beautiful person. In fact, when I hear the Christian, I believe it's Christian saying, the meek shall inherit the earth, I think of Thich Nhat Hanh. Of course, Jesus, but I think of Thich Nhat Hanh. And we in a way, Thich Nhat Hanh beautifully, of course, Jesus beautifully rehabilitates the term meek, because meek is often associated with weakness. But there's just something that is so undefended, so beautifully open, and just being in all of its fullness, that when I come into contact with Thich Nhat Hanh, I never met him personally, but I came into contact with him through his teachings, through his books, and later, I suppose, some recordings. That being is something I want inside of my being. Like I want it inside. And it's not from desire, from seeing a greater truth that something in me wants to evolve into, I suppose I could say. And that's kind of the definition of interconnectedness or interbeing. Connection is kind of a one-way thing. You know, I can connect with you, I can connect with him, I can connect with her, I can connect with those people over there. I can choose not to connect. I can choose to boundary up, which sometimes we might want to do. There is, the wisdom of boundaries. But should it be appropriate, the connection, simple connection is one thing, and it's good, but interconnectedness is something else. Interconnectedness for me is interbeing. Interbeing for me is intersubjectivity. Intersubjectivity. That I can get the other person from their inside. And their inside, their world, their subjectivity can be received on my inside. That is interconnectivity. That is interconnectedness. That is interbeing. There is an intersubjectivity, not just me as an object looking at another subject, or me as the subject, looking at another object who has subjectivity, but rather going deeper, feeling deeper, allowing deeper, letting my mindfulness penetrate deeper into the subjectivity of another, and letting that subjectivity penetrate, when the conditions are right, my subjectivity. Interconnectedness, interbeing, intersubjectivity. I remember when I first started kind of getting this intersubjectivity. This is all related to meditation, and we will get there shortly. when I first started getting intersubjectivity, I'm also an Aikido teacher. Aikido is a spiritual martial art, and I've been into the art for 40 years. And in my late 20s, I guess, early 30s, I came into contact with a teacher, a man named Peter Roston, and he was quite a genius and an amazing teacher. He had a lot of Dharma awakenings that he was also had access to, and he. I would watch him working with students, and I was on my path to becoming a teacher. I was probably even teaching already a little bit. In fact, I'd been teaching for 3 years at that time, and I watched him work with students, and I was young and kind of full of myself and a little bit arrogant with whatever I had achieved at that time, as is the case with with personal development. And there would be people asking me questions, rather rudimentary questions, and these were, let's say, advanced workshops. And I used to be so judgmental of their questions, in my arrogance. I think, are you serious? You're still asking that question? Whatever was going on in my mind. Peter would fully be with them and ask them, and he would just meet them and ask them a little bit deeper. He would explore with them until something would unlock in them and they just got it. And I could see that. And I was so impressed because I'd been practicing in Japan for 8 years full time working with teachers. And there's no Socratic dialogue in Japanese culture. It's one way teaching, from the hierarchy from up to down. And there's a power to that. But there was no intersubjectivity, and Peter was demonstrating it beautifully. And by the way, his skills as an artist it was there. And I asked Peter, what's going on? I'm so impressed. I'm arrogant and judging, and how do you do that? He says, look, if you want to understand, if you really want to help another person unlock awakening, in this case it was skill, but it was really awakening, you've got to get them from the inside. You've got to understand them. And that was a turning point for me. That to truly understand somebody, you have to stop, be present, listen, and get them from their inside. You may want to try this in your daily life. A simple question, when somebody says something that puts you off one way or the other, there's 2 or 3 simple questions that always get to the point. What do you mean? Can you say more? I'm not sure I understand. Or you do reflective listening. So I'm hearing you say this, is that? And then within 2 or 3 degrees, we get them. We're there. We're there with them without judgment, fully interbeing. It might be one way. They might not be there with us, and they might. Certainly, this process invites others to join us in interconnectedness, but we can't force depth on anybody else. We cannot force depth of consciousness on another. Take that to your relationships. We cannot force depth of consciousness on another person. To do so is in a way aggressive. It's offensive. We just can't do it. The best that we can do is we can meet others where they're at, maybe a little bit deeper. Meeting where they're at is the beginning of interconnectedness. Maybe a little bit deeper invites them to meet us. Or when we're in something and we notice that another person is meeting us at a little bit deeper, that gives us the opportunity to stop, let go, and drop into where they're at. This is kind of the interpersonal practice of interconnectedness. We're going to be looking at interconnectedness or interbeing or practicing with polarization in the first person with ourselves in our own practice. We're going to be looking at it in relationships this week, and we're going to be looking at it in the world. How it's the same practice in the self with others and in the world. But whatever the case, and whether we're working with ourselves or with others or in the world, there is a process of deepening that moves from dissonance to resonance, that moves from resonance to coherence. That process is the same when I'm working with myself as it is when I'm in relationships, as it is when I'm relating to the world. It is the same practice. practice, and that practice is nothing less than the Dharma. And understanding these moves is the Dharma. This is the wisdom of the Dharma. Now, you may ask, some of us are more self-oriented in a healthy way. And I'm just doing my own practice. Going through life, doing my own practice. Social activism stuff is not my thing. No problem. Not a problem. Others might be, well, no, look at the world. We have to go out and, we have to benefit the world. It's okay. We could be oriented in either way. It doesn't really matter which way you start. But for an integrated practice, for your Dharma to have a greater impact, we must hit all three. Working with ourselves in one way or the other, bringing our practice into relationships in one way or the other, and bringing our practice into how we relate to the world one way or the other. Because for sure, the world needs it. The Buddha had this question. This big question actually was a part of the story of the Buddha. He had his enlightenment, his perfect enlightenment. After eons and several lifetimes, there were no Buddhas. He went through all the purification. Bodhisattva came back again and again and again. So many beautiful stories. And even the life of the Buddha, it's a beautiful story. He left his princely life with wealth and luxury, went on his own journey for 7 years, attained perfect awakening. It's a whole other story. We won't go into it, but attained perfect awakening. And he sat there for, I believe, 35 days, going into Nibbana for days, coming out, going into Nibbana for days, coming out, going in, coming out. Perfect purification, perfect. He did what needed to be done. And there was nothing else to do. His karma was complete. But then he could have just become a Pachaka Buddha, the so-called silent Buddhas that they awaken, they never say or tell anybody, and that's it. But he looked out with his mind's eye into the world and saw the tremendous amount of human suffering. We only have to open an app or turn on the news and look into the mind's eye of the world to see the tremendous amount of human suffering. That might make us want to run for the hills, which is totally fine. It might make us want to engage, totally fine. But the Buddha, having completed his practice and attaining his perfect enlightenment, Buddha, perfect enlightenment, he, with great wisdom and great compassion, he saw the suffering with great wisdom, and with great compassion, he said, hey, I can help them. And he was motivated and moved from his seat to go and teach. And that's how the wheel of the Dharma began to roll. And that brings us to meditation. Here we are. And I would say from one degree to the other, we are all working on ourselves. And we're all somehow bringing whatever level of awakening we got, minor or major, whatever, we're sharing that with the world in some way. Probably failing quite a bit, but also doing well. Sometimes having an impact. But this brings us to our meditation practice, because meditation practice is the practice of the purification of the mind. Meditation is the practice of the purification of the mind, and mindfulness is the sole practice that purifies the mind and leads to the awakening of path and fruition consciousness, the state of Nibbana. For the state of Nibbana to awaken, our practice needs to evolve. There's kind of a progressive nature to our practice. Just look at your own practice. Back some years ago when you started, you were there, and look where you are now. You've traveled some distance. It's matured in you. You've grown. It will keep growing. It will keep maturing. And the highest meditative stage is called Sankarupa Jnana, the state of equanimity towards all formations. Equanimity is the total interbeing. Equanimity is total interconnectedness. Equanimity, there is nothing between you and the world. The mind, in equanimity, the mind is in perfect, total conformity with reality. Think about that for a second. There is a state. We can practice equanimity. I have a cat, and she's out because she comes in and she likes to sit behind the computer. And then sometimes she plays with the wires and it messes up the camera or the mic. So I got her outside, but she knows how to open the door. She jumps and opens the handle. So she's like over there jumping sometimes. And I'm like, here I am giving the Dharma, and my cat is over there jumping on the door, making noise. So reality, something in me that's resisting it. Oh, my cat, which I love dearly, but she's a mischievous little thing. And so there's a little bit of resistance to reality. Oh, it is what it is. Equanimity, perfect conformity with reality. Imagine that. Perhaps you have experienced it. Perhaps you've tasted it. Perhaps you've had it longer or shorter. This is where we need to be for true interconnectivity, for true interbeing, for true intersubjectivity. That everything that arises is valid. Why? Because it's reality. We may choose to act and even stop, and we may, all that's also valid. But what does it mean for the mind to be in perfect conformity with reality? Whatever it means, the implication is that everything in us that is resisting reality, the truth of this moment, everything in us that is disconnected from the truth of this moment, in one way or the other, needs to be purified. Visuddhimagga, the path of purification, is the path that you and I walk. And this leads us to the one practice that activates that path. And we'll meditate after this introduction to mindfulness. Short, few words of mindfulness. Mindfulness is the agent. Mindfulness is the practice that activates our developmental process. So a quick review of mindfulness. Mindfulness is being cognizant, being aware, knowing what's arising in this present moment at one of the 6 sense doors. It is currently arising. It's not what I imagine is arising. It is what is actually arising. It is not what I want to arise or what I don't want to arise, what I prefer to arise. It is what is actually arising at this current moment. In one of the 6 sense doors: sound, smell, sight, touch, taste, and thoughts. That's the 6 senses. Those are the 6 senses in Buddhist, according to Buddhist psychology. And when we're meditating on one of those, on an object at one of those doors. Our job is to simply know it, to be mindful. And the characteristic of mindfulness is that it's non-superficial. Okay, and this is going to be the introduction to our practice today. That a non-superficial basically means that our practice sinks. So if you think of interconnectedness, I connect with you, and wait a second, I'm going to try to get you a little bit deeper. I relax, and now I start to connect with you a little bit deeper. My understanding of you, my knowing of your interior, getting where you're coming from, deepens. There's a sinking. Mindfulness is not superficial. Mindfulness sinks. But for me to understand you deeper, I must first allow myself to drop into a deeper place. Meditation is the most direct practice for creating depth in ourselves. Why? Because when we practice mindfulness, the nature of mindfulness is that the knowing, the understanding of the current experiences deepens and deepens and deepens. And then we'll hit some layers of resistance. It'll go back up to the surface again. That's not a problem. Knowing that is really the practice. Being mindful of that is the practice. And the moment I'm mindful of that it deepens and deepens and deepens. So for today's practice, allow yourself to deepen. Allow the knowing, the understanding, the being with your experience, the being and the being with whatever's arising in your experience. Allow it to just deepen, deepen, deepen. If it becomes more shallow, no need to judge. That's just the process. Be mindful of that and allow that understanding to deepen. Rinse and repeat. Finding a comfortable position. Eyes closed or open, whatever you prefer. Meditation is an inside job. So we are secluding ourselves to the interiors of our own experience. Take a moment and checking in with the body, being mindful of what's arising, knowing the kind of dominant experiences in the body, an itch in the leg or the seat, or the temperature of the room, sounds, whatever is arising. Just know those. Open, allow, and know deeper. If you feel yourself relaxing into the practice, beautiful. Relaxed practice is kind of effortless and allow that to deepen. If you find the practice naturally tensing up, beautiful. That is your process. Allow yourself to open and allow, for example, any tension that's arising in the body. Don't breathe it away. Don't stretch it away. Be with it because it is the process of your practice. Being and being with whatever is arising in the moment, knowing it directly, sustaining that knowing or mindfulness of the practice, and notice how you will know it a little bit deeper, a little bit more. With each breath, in each moment by moment, breath by breath.
And bringing your mindfulness back to the body, and feel the body. Allowing that feeling to deepen, allowing mindfulness to sink. Bring your mindfulness to the breath. And feel the breath. Allowing your knowing of the breath to deepen. And bringing your mindfulness to the mind and knowing your mental state. And allowing that knowing to deepen. Being mindful of the space on the inside. And as you slowly open your eyes, coming out of the meditation, being mindful of the space on the outside.
Today's podcast is an offering to you from our archive of freely available live daily classes. We make wisdom teachings and meditations as freely available as possible to as many people as wish to practice. You can help ensure we can continue to support a worldwide Sangha by leaving a review wherever you get your podcasts, by sharing this with someone who'd be interested, and by offering a small financial support at sangha.live/donate.